Hi, I'm MC Jessie. 大家好，讀你聽2.0。今日我哋繼續讀 Miguel de Cervantes 嘅 Don Quixote， 讀到第38節啦。呢一節嘅名叫做 Which treats of the curious discourse Don Quixote delivered on arms and letters。上回第37節咧，講到 Don Quixote 喺進餐嘅時間呢，就同席間嘅眾人就喺度講佢好開心啦，聚集咗唔同嘅人啦，有個 diversity 喺度啦，同埋咧就講作為騎士咧嘅一啲苦楚，對比而家嘅學生們啊，即係年青一輩啦，佢哋所受嘅苦難呢，真係盡在不言中啊，各自有大家嘅難處。順帶一提啦，作者亦都介紹咗個新嘅角色啦 ，Maria 啦，係一個 Moorish 嚟嘅，佢係表面上係一個唔同膚色外國人，但實際上咧就係信奉天主，佢亦都好想信天主，只不過咧佢就未進行洗禮，亦都好想希望進行洗禮，要改咗 Maria 呢個名，佢自己自身抗拒佢嘅阿拉伯嘅原名咁啊，令到咧同 Don Quixote 隨行嘅女士們咧都流下淚來啊！好，我哋睇下呢個席間 Don Quixote 嘅豪言壯語咧係點樣結束先。跟住我哋交俾 Costa 同大家讀嚟聽。
Continuing his discourse, Don Quixote said, As we began in the student's case with poverty and its accompaniments, let us see now if the soldier is richer, and we shall find that in poverty itself there is no one poorer, for he is dependent on his miserable pay, which comes late or never, or else on what he can plunder, seriously imperiling his life and conscience. And sometimes his nakedness will be so great that a slashed doublet serves him for uniform and shirt, and in the depth of winter he has to defend himself against the inclemency of the weather in the open field with nothing better than the breath of his mouth, which I need not say, coming from an empty place, must come out cold, contrary to the laws of nature. To be sure, he looks forward to the approach of night to make up for all these discomforts on the bed that awaits him, which, unless by some fault of his, never sins by being over narrow, for he can easily measure out on the ground as he likes, and roll himself about in it to his heart's content without any fear of the sheets slipping away from him. Then, after all this, suppose the day and hour for taking his degree in his calling to have come. Suppose the day of battle to have arrived, when they infest him with the doctor's cap made of lint, to mend some bullet hole, perhaps, that has gone through his temples, or left him with a crippled arm or leg. Or if this does not happen, and merciful heaven watches over him and keeps him safe and sound, it may be he will be in the same poverty he was in before, and he must go through more engagements and more battles, and come victorious out of all before he betters himself. But miracles of that sort are seldom seen. For tell me, sirs, if you have ever reflected upon it, by how much do those who have gained by war fall short of the number of those who have perished in it? No doubt you will reply that there can be no comparison, that the dead cannot be numbered, while the living who have been rewarded may be summed up with 3 figures, all which is the reverse in the case of men of letters. For by skirts, to say nothing of sleeves, they all find means of support, so that though the soldier has more to endure, his reward is much less. But against all this, it may be urged that it is easier to reward 2,000 soldiers, for the former may be remunerated by giving them places, which must perforce be conferred upon men of their calling, while the latter can only be recompensed out of the very property of the master they serve. But this impossibility only strengthens my argument. Putting this, however, aside, for it is a puzzling question for which it is difficult to find a solution, let us return to the superiority of arms over letters, a matter still undecided. So many are the arguments put forward on each side, for besides those I have mentioned, letters say that without them, arms cannot maintain themselves, for war too has its laws and is governed by them, and laws belong to the domain of letters and men of letters. To this arms make answer that without them, laws cannot be maintained, for by arms states are defended, kingdoms preserved, cities protected, roads made safe, seas cleared of pirates, and in short, If it were not for them, states, kingdoms, monarchies, cities, ways by sea and land would be exposed to the violence and confusion which war brings with it, so long as it lasts and is free to make use of its privileges and powers. And then it is plain that whatever costs most is valued and deserves to be valued most. To attain to eminence in letters cost a man time, watching, hunger, nakedness, headaches, indigestions, and other things of the sort, some of which I have already referred to. But for a man to come in the ordinary course of things to be a good soldier costs him all the student suffers, and in an incomparably higher degree, for at every step he runs the risk of losing his life. For what dread of want or poverty that can reach or harass the student can compare with what the soldier feels, who finds himself beleaguered in some stronghold mounting guard in some ravelin or cavalier, knows that the enemy is pushing a mine towards the post where he is stationed, and cannot under any circumstances retire or fly from the imminent danger that threatens him. All he can do is to inform his captain of what is going on so that he may try to remedy it by a countermine, and then stand his ground in fear and expectation of the moment when he will fly up to the clouds without wings and descend into the deep against his will. And if this seems a trifling risk, let us see whether it is equaled or surpassed by the encounter of two galleys stem to stem, in the midst of the open sea, locked and entangled one with the other, when the soldier has no more standing room than 2 feet of the plank of the spur. And yet, though he sees before him, threatening him as many ministers of death as there are cannon of the foe pointed at him, not a lance length from his body, and sees too that with the first heedless step he will go down to visit the profundities of Neptune's bosom, still with dauntless heart, urged on by honor that nerves him, he makes himself a target for all that musketry, and struggles to cross that narrow path to the enemy's ship. And what is still more marvelous, no sooner has one gone down into the depths he will never rise from till the end of the world, than another takes his place. And if he too falls into the sea that waits for him like an enemy, another and another will succeed him without a moment's pause between their deaths. Courage and daring the greatest that all the chances of war can show. Happy the blessed ages that knew not the dread fury of those devilish engines of artillery, whose inventor, I am persuaded, is in hell receiving reward of his diabolical invention, by which he made it easy for a base and cowardly arm to take the life of a gallant gentleman, and that when he knows not how or whence. In the height of the ardor and enthusiasm that fire and animate brave hearts, there should come some random bullet, discharged perhaps by one who fled in terror at the flash when he fired off his accursed machine, which in an instant puts an end to the project and cuts off the life of one who deserved to live for ages to come. And thus when I reflect on this, I am almost tempted to say that in my heart I repent of having adopted this profession of knight-errant in so detestable an age as we live in now. For though no peril can make me fear, still it gives me some uneasiness to think that powder and lead may rob me of the opportunity of making myself famous and renowned throughout the known earth by the might of my arm and the edge of my sword. But heaven's will be done. If I succeed in my attempt, I shall be all the more honored, as I have faced greater dangers than the knight-errant of yore exposed themselves to. All this lengthy discourse Don Quixote delivered while the others supped, forgetting to raise a morsel to his lips, though Sancho more than once told him to eat his supper, as he would have time enough afterwards to say all he wanted. It excited fresh pity in those who had heard him to see a man of apparently sound sense and with rational views on every subject he discussed, so hopelessly wanting in all, when his wretched unlucky chivalry was in question. The curate told him he was quite right in all he had said in favor of arms, and that he himself, though a man of letters and a graduate, was of the same opinion. They finished their supper, the cloth was removed, and while the hostess, her daughter, and Maritornes were getting Don Quixote of La Mancha's garret ready, in which it was arranged that the women were to be quartered by themselves for the night, Don Fernando begged the captive to tell him the story of his life, for it could not fail to be strange and interesting, to judge by the hints he had let fall on his arrival in company with Zoraida. To this the captive replied that he would very willingly yield to his request, only he feared his tale would not give them as much pleasure as he wished. Nevertheless, not to be wanting in compliance, he would tell it. The curate and the others thanked him and added their entreaties, and he, finding himself so pressed, said that there was no occasion asked, where a command had such a weight, and added, If your worships will give me your attention, you will hear a true story which, perhaps, fictitious ones, constructed with ingenious and studied art, cannot come up to. These words made them settle themselves in their places and preserve a deep silence. And he, seeing them waiting on his words in mute expectation, began thus in a pleasant, quiet voice.
唔該晒 Costa。好，呢一節就嚟到呢一度，集中喺Don Quixote嘅豪傑壯語嗰度啦。佢嘅論述啦，佢嘅彈述啊，咁佢主要就係講究竟係武裝緊要啲啊，定係文字緊要啲咧？難以得到定論啊！佢哋互相咧都係影響住。咁但係嚟到男性呢個身份上面，作為一個士兵，定係作為一個寫作家重要啲？喺Don Quixote眼中咧，或者作者嘅眼中咧，就係一個士兵，一個武裝，佢嘅身份咧係比較值得尊重嘅。點解咧？就因為就算一個武裝者一個士兵啦，喺戰場上面僥倖生還，佢所得到嚟嘅榮耀啊，佢嘅獎勵咧，都係名副其實嘅。故此咧，應該得到大眾嘅尊重，或者起碼得到佢自己嘅尊重。食完嘢之後咧，咁啊，Don Fernando 咧就懇求阿 Maria 嘅隨從咧，佢咧去講下佢自己佢嘅生平啦，佢嘅背景故事啦。因為始終咧作為一個Moorish 啦，喺嚟自一個唔同嘅國度，佢嘅故事咧必然咧係吸引嘅。呢個係大家嘅猜測，所以咧都好想聽佢故事。而呢一個隨從咧，亦都因應咗呢個請求，佢咧就準備咧去講佢自己嘅故事。作者繼續套用呢個故事中故事嘅方法啦。咁啊，實際上呢個歷險咧，暫時咧其實係停頓咗嘅，但係喺精神上咧就非常飽滿啊，喺度中環前程。好，我哋睇下呢一節有啲咩字同大家分享先。Diabolical, diabolical, D-I-A-B-O-L-I-C-A-L。形容詞嚟嘅 characteristic of the devil, or so devil as to be suggestive of the devil， 或者 disgracefully bad or unpleasant。 Diablo 啦 ，Diablo 就係魔鬼啦，喺拉丁語喺西班牙文當中。Profundity, profundity, P-R-O-F-U-N-D-I-T-Y。 Profundity 名詞嚟嘅 great depth of insight or knowledge。咁呢個 profundity 嘅原字體咧就係 profound 啊，好有深意嘅解釋。第三個字比較少見啊 ，musketry M-U-S-K-E-T-R-Y。 musket 就係火繩槍啊。咁啊喺呢個文藝復興時期咧，我有咁講啦，係因為火繩槍算係熱武器嘅最開端啦。Musketry 意思即係 musket fire 啦，即係你進入咗呢個射程範圍啊，冒住槍火有咁嘅意味。好，呢一節嚟到呢度，下一節再同大家讀你聽，拜拜。
If you like this video, make sure to comment, like, share and subscribe to Costa. See you next Friday.